So let's hear it for Aaron and our home team again. So this month our theme is called The Practice of Being Uncomfortable, which is one of the chapters in The Soul of the Pilgrim. And you're probably thinking, really, who needs this? Who needs this? Isn't life always about finding ways to be comfortable instead of uncomfortable? And who in their right mind would want to practice being uncomfortable? Because the truth is, when we're uncomfortable, the first thing you do is you try to fix it, right? I mean, if you're too hot, you turn off the heat. If you're too cold, you put on a sweater. You do something immediately to correct the discomfort. So because we are on an inner pilgrimage this year, we're preparing for when we're on an outer pilgrimage, when we leave our building next year. So when you think about traveling or being a pilgrim or whatever, there are many times when you're simply uncomfortable, right? When you're traveling, even if you're going on a luxurious 5-star vacation, you still may have to get up at dawn to get to the airport, wait in the security lines. If you didn't upgrade your seat, you're cramped in a little seat. And if you're wanting to go someplace really far, you're on an airplane for 10 hours, 8 hours? What's comfortable about that, huh? And then you've got to pull your suitcase around. And so you may ask, why in the world would you do that? Why would you put yourself through such discomfort? And the truth is, you do it because you know on the other end, there's something hopefully magical that's going to be waiting for you, right? You're going to have new people and new foods and new experiences and inspirations, and there's going to be all this wonderful stuff, and that's why we put ourselves through that, so that we can experience something amazing. Being a pilgrim and being a traveler is about being a stranger, because you don't know the terrain, maybe you don't know the language, you don't know where the restaurants are or the hotels, and now that we have Google, it's a lot easier. I was grateful when I was traveling last year. I was in Germany for a couple of days with my son, and Jordan just has a way of downloading the Google Maps onto his phone, and it's like, here we get this bus here and catch that train there, and then we're here and we're there, and it's like clockwork. And then he left, and then I'm lost. And he coached me. He goes, Mom, when you're at the train station, read the thing in the front and really study it so you know where you're going. And anyway, I still got lost. But I know that one of the reasons that I travel is because it pushes me out of my comfort zone. It just puts me in a place where I don't know what's going on. And it pushes me into the practice of being uncomfortable. So again, we just don't like to be uncomfortable. When you put on a pair of pants that are too tight, what's the first thing you do? Take them off, right? And if you don't, then you're going to be uncomfortable pretty much for the whole day. You do something to change it pretty quickly. And yet when we are emotionally uncomfortable, we may not be willing to make a change as quickly as we would change our pants. So if you're willing to change your pants, why not change your circumstances, right? That takes a little more work. Instead, we tend to avoid reality, pretend it's not there, maybe do something to distract ourselves from what's really going on, or we can argue with reality, right? Like, well, it wasn't supposed to be like this, or this never should have happened, right? I have a lot of girlfriends who go, we weren't supposed to get old. This was not supposed to happen to us. How did this happen? I don't know. We argue with reality. Byron Katie said, I am a lover of what is. Not because I'm a spiritual person, but because it hurts when I argue with reality. When we stop opposing reality, action becomes simple, fluid, kind, and fearless. So I think the practice of being uncomfortable is really the practice of being willing to be in the present moment, no matter what's going on, right? To be with that. So yesterday, I was officiating at a memorial service in the chapel, and the deceased son has been in prison And so he got a leave, to come to the service. And, so we were waiting for him, and he came with 2 guards, a bright orange jumpsuit, chains around his feet, and chains around his, handcuffs around his hands. And so, we see him, and he's coming in. And so during the service, during the eulogy part, when people were speaking about the woman who had passed, and it was his mom. And I was telling everybody, when you're in the chapel, the acoustics are perfect, so it doesn't matter if you come to the front of the room, you can stand wherever you are and you can be heard. And so at one point he stood up and he said, I would like to speak. And he said, but I want to go to the front of the room. And he had to ask the guard, is that okay? Yes. So he makes his way up to the front of the room very slowly, and he's in that bright orange jumpsuit, and he's got his guard standing right here behind him. And he said, this is Officer so-and-so, and, say hi to everybody. He said hi. And then he shared from his heart about how much he loved his mom, and they were estranged for many, many, many years, and they reconnected before she had a stroke, and how she had changed his life, how she had taught him so much. And what was interesting is he's standing there, and he said, I'm happier than I've ever been in my life. I am more at peace with myself, and I'm more connected with who I am. And he said, and I know it doesn't look like it. I'm wearing orange, and I'm chained up, and I've got guards. It doesn't look like it, but inside, I have made a shift and a change, and I am a different person than I was before. And it was a practice of being uncomfortable. Right? You can't look at somebody in a bright orange jumpsuit and not feel uncomfortable. And yet he stood there in that practice of being uncomfortable and spoke the truth in his total authentic self. And it was so moving, and it was so powerful to be in that room with that family yesterday. Spiritual teachers throughout the ages have sought out the practice of being uncomfortable. Think about Siddhartha, right? What did Siddhartha? He had everything. He lived in a palace, and he had all the luxuries that one could possibly have. He had riches, he had a wife, he had everything, and yet he chose to leave this comfort. He chose to step out and seek enlightenment and the practice of being uncomfortable, and he became the Buddha. He became enlightened. He became awakened. Jesus also sought out the uncomfortable when he went into the wilderness. Before his ministry, he gets baptized by John the Baptist, and then he's ready to start his ministry. And he goes into the wilderness, and he fasts for 40 days and 40 nights. And you probably all know the story. At the end of the 40 days, the devil appears to him. Now, in Unity, we look at everything metaphysically. So what appeared to him, I believe, was his shadow. He's about ready to start his ministry, and he had to look at, and that's part of the practice of being uncomfortable, he had to look at all those sides of himself that maybe weren't so great. How is he going to do this ministry? And so here he is. He's hungry. It's been 40 days and 40 nights, and the devil says, hey, just take the stones and turn them into bread. And he says, man shall not live by bread alone. And of course, he's saying there's more to life and more to my ministry, more to me being a rabbi than the material world, than material possessions. And then secondly, the devil said to him, find my notes. He took him up and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in one moment of time. And he said, I will give you all authority and glory, for it has been delivered to me, and I will give it to whom I will. If you then will worship me, it will be yours. And Jesus said, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. So as he's facing his shadow, is there a part of him, I wonder, where he's like, I could just kind of rule everything. I could rule the world. I could take that as my spiritual teaching and just rule everything. And yet he chose instead to be a servant and to serve. So he faced that part of himself as well. And then lastly, the devil says, if you're the Son of God, then throw yourself off this mountain and the angels will come and they'll pick you up. And he said, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test. And again, this one is about who is he serving? He is serving God. He is not serving his ego. And he says, Satan, get behind me. So he's willing to go to that uncomfortable place and to look at those parts of himself so that he doesn't project it. He doesn't project it onto, the people who are following him. He's very clear in who he is. And then he also then finds 12 guys to go along with him. And they're comfortable in their lives, they're fishermen, they've got their wives, they got their families, they're doing what they're doing. And Jesus says, hey, come on, follow me. Take the path of being uncomfortable. They didn't know where they were going. They didn't know what they were getting into, but they chose that path of being a pilgrim and stepping out into the unknown. So we as a community are also now being called into the practice of being uncomfortable through this building program. You hear me talk about the traffic probably every week, but the parking and, it's just always streets are closed and there's always this obstacle of something to get here, and it is uncomfortable. I've been riding my bike in some days because then I don't have to deal with the traffic. But what I need, what the board needs, what the staff needs, I think, from our community is during this time of transition, during this time of the practice of being uncomfortable, is your support in the form of your participation on a physical level, on being here, on a financial level, and on a spiritual level with love and compassion as we walk through this experience. Because really, we're still at the beginning of the journey. We've been in this for 3 or 4 years, and it's like, we're still at the beginning. And so at this point, really, we're kind of like we're in the security line. We're getting up and going to the airport. We're sitting on that cramped seat, waiting to get somewhere. Because just like a trip that we're taking, whenever you take a trip, it's like, whoa, something great is going to be at the end of it. At least you hope so. That you're going to experience this whole new land and a whole new language and all new foods, and it's going to be wonderful. And so it is at the end of our journey. We're going to have this wonderful, fabulous, amazing, new, beautiful facility. But really what the church is us. Right? It's the people. It's not the building. It's not this building. It's not the next building. It's not the last building. It's this community. And so I encourage you this month as we pursue this topic is to ask yourself, what are those parts of myself that are maybe uncomfortable or that I've kind of cast out, and like Jesus going to the wilderness and actually really looking at them. Christine Valters Paintner, who wrote the book The Soul of a Pilgrim, said, when we risk the unfamiliar, our resilience grows and we become more capable of living life. On a deeper level, the call is not to run away when things become challenging. Stability demands that we stay with difficult experiences and stay present to the discomfort they create in us. So what are the uncomfortable parts calling to you for some welcome? For some welcome. So I'd like to move this into prayer, if we could. So I invite you simply to turn your attention within and check yourself for what is your reaction to the words, the practice of being uncomfortable. What does that mean for you? Is there a conversation that you need to have with someone that maybe pushes the edges? Is there something that's calling you that maybe you're a little frightened to do because you don't know how to do it? Is that calling to you? And so just as Jesus stepped into the wilderness, just as Siddhartha stepped into the unknown, and just as we as a community are stepping into the unknown, I invite you on an inner level to do the same. Knowing that we are divinely guided, that Spirit is guiding and directing every step that we take, every word that we speak, that there is a higher plan that is outworking in our lives. And I ask in this time of prayer that also we focus on the boys that are in the cave in Thailand. And I know that 6 of them have been rescued, and so we hold all of them in safety and in light. The rescue workers, the boys, their families, that we see them and we surround them with our love and support right now in this moment. And if there's something that is weighing on your heart, some prayer that you need to offer up to Spirit, I invite you to do so in the next moment of silence. What is it you need help with? What is it you need guidance for? And so whatever it is, know that you have that courage to take the next step. That this or something better is manifesting in your life right now. And it is for this awareness and in the name and through the power of the living Spirit of truth that we say thank you and amen.